To begin, I want to introduce our speaker. Dr. Paul Kuber is an associate professor at Washington State University in Agriculture and Natural Resource Extension Unit, serving as a regional livestock specialist in Northeast Washington. Dr. Kuber has focused his career across teaching, research, and extension activities. Subject matter expertise includes quality assurance, animal welfare, food safety, and ultimately consumer protection. Dr. Kuber has engaged as an advisor to the Washington State Department of Agricultural Regional Markets Program, helping to navigate challenges in direct-to-consumer markets within the meat and poultry sector. Dr. Kuber has also been part of a dynamic team of experienced educators nationwide creating Youth for the Quality Care of Animals, a national multi-species program offering a consistent message of animal care, food safety, and consumer protection. This program educates 90,000 plus youth annually and led to the creation of Prepare2Respond, a disease risk management program for fair management and volunteers aimed at protecting fairs and exhibitions, as well as those that attend. Also with us today is Lindsay Chichester, Extension Educator, University of Nevada-Reno, and Bernie O'Rourke, Extension Specialist from the University of Wisconsin. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kuber.
Well, thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure to be here today and to be able to present this program to the audience here. And Lindsay and Bernie, the three of us have joined together to do this, and so we'll have an opportunity to answer questions after we get done with the presentation component here. So we'll go ahead and move on. As Liz had indicated, this is about a program that we had built, Prepare2Respond, which is animal disease outbreaks and livestock events. And it's an online educational experience that we're going to share with you. If my slides will advance. There it goes. All right, so this program was a learner engaged program designed to empower exhibition employees, volunteers, and first responders by building awareness of biosecurity and disease mitigation, resulting in a more rapid response and reduced impact. The project was funded by the 2019 round of funding through National Animal Disease Preparedness and Response Program. And so the project timeline was June 2020 through May 2022, and we released the website or had the website offered by June 22 for a 2-year offering free of charge for the fairs industry. And when we pulled ourselves together as far as a team and we decided we were going to apply for the funds, we realized that there was some need within the fairs industry to educate people that are either working for or managing or volunteering within the fairs to protect the fairs in terms of disease spread and mitigating the effect of those diseases. There's a lot of concern, and when we look at the fairs industry, there's heightened concern because of the number of people that attend those fairs and, of course, the exposure to animals and with the potential of disease transmission, if it is zoonotic in nature, it certainly creates some opportunities or a breeding ground within those events. And particularly if we look at the population, both animals and people, a very transient population. So there's a heightened risk in terms of spread. The team that we had on the original round of funding was myself from Washington State University, Heidi Carroll, who used to be or formerly from South Dakota State University in an extension position. She's since moved on to private industry. Lindsay Chichester from University of Nevada and Bernie O'Rourke from University of Wisconsin-Madison. And so at this point, there's three of us that are left on this this project. Heidi was a huge asset and we appreciate her efforts, but she's chose to go on to a different direction. And so that leaves Lindsay, Bernie, and myself who are helping to champion this. The need and objectives for the project, how we came together, just in brief, Bernie and Lindsay and I have been involved with Youth for the Quality Care of Animals since the visioning process, which occurred in 2013. In 2015, we sat down to write the curriculum, and I think we had close to 48 pieces of curriculum that we sat down and we wrote within a week. There were about 12 of us authors that worked together during that week process. And then we built that website from 2015 to 2017 and offered it in March of 2017. That program, as indicated in the introduction that Liz gave, has grown to this year. I think we actually hit about 97,000 youth that we're educating through an online curriculum piece. And that Youth for the Quality Care of Animals program not only covers animal care and animal well-being, but also teaches youth about leadership development. We also have components in there about veterinary client-patient relationship, biosecurity, and disease transmission that we're trying to educate these youth to, so that they can either be educated consumers, or potentially if they go into livestock production, that we've already given them the building blocks to be successful livestock producers in terms of mitigating disease and food safety concerns, as well as animal welfare and well-being. So we thought when we pulled this project together and we evaluated things, that we had a pretty clear understanding that we could put together a national curriculum that could certainly educate people across all sectors of the fair industry. And it was certainly a challenge, but I think we created a curriculum that will work for fairs of any size and any type of animals that occur there or that exhibit there. So the need, we know that there's, that animal disease outbreaks can be a serious threat to the U.S. food supply chain. It can affect foreign exports and consumer perceptions about the industry. And so mitigating disease in any situation, whether it's commercial production, whether it's an event setting like a fair and exposition, it certainly becomes critically important. And trying to protect our food supply as a result of creating some awareness, I think that was the direction that we were heading. By mixing of animals and people at fairs and expositions, as we've already mentioned, that's certainly a high risk for disease outbreak, and it's with a transient population. And so they're there for a few days, they're going to relocate to other areas. And so there's always potential that people can continue to pass that on, or animals can pass that on back into commercial production. We realize that those who organize, volunteer, or respond to an emergency at fairs and expositions need relevant, timely training on how to identify and respond to an animal disease threat. And we don't expect to make them veterinarians. We don't want them to diagnose. That's not the point of this whole program, but it is an awareness campaign. So if they see something, they need to say something or ask some questions, and being able to have a plan in place so that they can ask the right people to verify whether it is a serious concern, or whether it's something that they can continue to move on with the fair as they had expected to originally. And so, we want them to be able to ask questions, and for everybody in the barn to be able to understand the importance of taking that next step. So the forces driving need for learner-engaged online training program, external forces, global disease threats. I think both Bernie and I are sitting, we're in states that have international borders, obviously Washington with open waters, and then Canada to our north, Wisconsin with Canada to their north. Lindsay's a little more inland, but she's close to California, which has got an international border there. And so, we understand that there are threats that come in. And then with our transient population through travel, there's always opportunities that exist. And certainly there's diseases that we want to hold at bay. We know that there can be supply chain impacts. We know foreign trade and market impacts can certainly occur. And then we look at the human and animal health risks that potentially occur. It's certainly something that we want to be aware of and know how to mitigate if a problem exists. Internal sources, a current lack of training, lack of a centralized messaging system, mixing of animal and people at events is certainly a key one. And then employee and volunteer turnover. A lot of the fairs and expositions, and actually in a lot of different areas in the livestock industry, we're starting to see a higher turnover rate. And so every time you have a turnover rate, we need to have access to a centralized message and education that has been peer reviewed and is easily accessible for most people. And so we thought that this would be an opportunity for a training program in an online module. The objective, the primary goal is to develop a nationwide peer-reviewed training module to assist in mitigating risk involved with animal disease outbreaks at fairs and expositions. The supporting goal is this training aims to protect the health and safety of livestock show and exhibition participants, staff, and attendees, public perceptions of the livestock industry, and the economic stability of communities hosting fairs and expositions. If a fair has to shut down or because of a disease concern early in the time that they're supposed to be open, that's certainly a huge economic impact for that community. But it may also be the right thing for them to do depending on the severity of the disease. The learner that we've targeted really is anybody who's associated with the fairs. And if we look at livestock event personnel, obviously they're going to be a key component. So fair managers and boards probably should take this module. Fair vets, fair staff and volunteers, barn superintendents, livestock or animal exhibition directors certainly would be kind of a primary audience on the livestock event personnel. But a secondary audience is sometimes we need to educate the exhibitors. And so both adult and youth exhibitors possibly their parents as well, in terms of biosecurity and disease mitigation, because a lot of times maybe they don't understand why we do some of the things that we do. And so this is a great opportunity and a free education for them that we had offered in the first 2 years of this program to maybe get online and learn a little bit more. Other fair volunteers and professionals without direct livestock contact, but they could be pulled into a disease mitigation, in terms of crowd control and those type of things. And so we think that's pretty important. And also understanding some of the challenges that we have on the animal side of things in the fairs and exhibitions. And then youth interested in a career in fairs or the livestock industry, or even health from that perspective, either animal or human health, to understand how we all have to coalesce and work together in these type of situations. So it might be an opportunity if they have an interest in the livestock industry, but they also have an interest in animal or human health, that they can still volunteer and give back or engage with the fairs community, and because they have that personal interest. First responders, the primary audience was law enforcement, fire rescue, emergency or EMT, and certainly a secondary audience, getting back to the exhibitors and youth interested in a career, as a first responder, how they still can again engage with the fairs industry as far as that is concerned. And the first responder component, as we'll see shortly, here in a bit, I think it creates more opportunities once they go through this program to ask some additional questions and to be able to engage with livestock event personnel. We learned early on in the process that sometimes there's a disconnect with those that are brought in for crowd control, that maybe they don't understand the animal piece, yet they're brought into that particularly when there's a situation with disease mitigation or animal movement. So the solution that we came up with was developing a learning and needs analysis, and then also content development and review panels. So we created a series of questions that were developed to capture information matching the objectives within the grant, what we had hoped to achieve. The information that was gathered was used to develop our roadmap for the development of each module. At that time, we weren't sure if we were going to develop 3 modules, 4 modules, how we were going to approach it. But having had that first step, which incorporated content experts that covered the FAIR professionals, emergency response and management, state public health veterinarians, state veterinarians, extension professionals, tribal liaisons, USDA, Jane Rooney and Todd Baer were both at the table from USDA, APHIS. Of course, they were also our liaisons from the grant funding perspective, but huge contributors to what we developed here. And we really appreciate in terms of their content expertise, as well as their ability to be able to review things when we needed that to occur. But we brought all these groups together, and we had these question answer periods, and we were able to capture quite a bit of insight. Originally, we intended to do this on a face-to-face or an in-person approach, but what occurred was COVID right in the mix of it. I think a lot of us still can recall that. So we ended up not being able to do these face-to-face, but I think it also gave us more breadth and access to a larger number of experts across the country. So we pulled these programs together. We did them in a virtual piece. And I think we really gained a lot of insight and a lot of information from all of these groups. The team, in terms of the authors, once we had our roadmap and we realized, you know, we had focused on 3 modules, one of which being an introductory module for disease, both disease type, disease transmission, how that ties into the One Health approach within CDC, as well as making sure that we're meeting the guidelines for APHIS veterinary services. We pulled our team together based off of the areas that we needed to backfill for content. And so obviously our core team, myself, Heidi, Bernie, and Lindsay, were at the table. We also had invited content experts, Marla Calico, who's the CEO and president of the International Association of Fairs and Expositions. Wow. Certainly understands the fair community, and she's looking for opportunities to mitigate risk. Dr. Jane Rooney from USDA, as I mentioned here, bringing her expertise from veterinary services as well as CDC One Health. Babcock from Michigan State University. He's no longer with the university. I think he's actually working for the State Department of Ag in Michigan now. But when he was with Michigan State University, he was instrumental in helping us navigate some of the first responder piece. And so we knew that Michigan had some great fact sheets for the fairs industry as well as youth. And so we reached out to them, and Nick was gracious enough to be able to offer his time, and Michigan State University was gracious enough to allow us to be able to utilize his expertise. And so that worked out well. Chris Heine from Oklahoma State University. She's a faculty member there in animal science, has a really strong background in terms of animal movement and disease mitigation. She works pretty closely within the horse industry there in Oklahoma. Dr. Del Moore, who is a retired Washington State University Extension veterinarian, and having her in close access or proximity to myself certainly worked out well when we had questions beyond either the content gathering piece or the writing piece. And then Dr. Russ Daly, also an extension veterinarian from South Dakota State University, I think worked pretty closely with Heidi as we were developing the modules and the website interactions. So the training modules that we created, one was an introductory module, as I mentioned. You know, we know that in an emergency situation, and particularly in a fair situation, there kind of needs to be a chain of command, and that needs to be identified. We determined that an emergency response plan is necessary regardless of the size of fair. And that was one of our biggest challenges, trying to identify the information that was going to be pertinent and important for all types of fairs, because in some situations you're talking about a small fair, you can't say that you're going to reach out to the state veterinarian straight away. It might be a local veterinarian, a local volunteer before that, or volunteer veterinarian before that actually escalates into the state component. And so we tried to write the curriculum and the experience to really fit the fair themselves, and that they have to develop a plan that's unique to their operation, and then how do they need to approach that. We understand that an outbreak can affect animal welfare. There's animal-human health concerns, there's markets, there's public perceptions, personal lives and communities, and so those were all the things that we were targeting. What we did was clearly define the role of all parties and individuals involved. We framed a response plan, we built relationships, and talked about open line and communication. So we were trying to create a team effort and environment. We accept the responsibility for mitigating risk due to a disease outbreak. And so those are the things that we tried to put into the module for that introductory piece, and that, you know, really trying to stress that it's a team effort and environment, and that everybody has a role in terms of mitigating those disease possibilities or the potential. And I think inherently most people that are in the fairs industry, you know, they want to protect the fair attendees, they want to protect the exhibitors, they want to protect the livestock industry. You know, their heart is in the right place. They just may not always have the tools to be able to get all of the things done. And so that's what we're hoping we'll accomplish with this. What we believe after going through that introductory module is that there is an opportunity for protection of human and animal health, and that safety is of utmost importance. It is possible to mitigate risk with prior planning, and the effects of a single outbreak can be far-reaching. And so these are all things that they're going to learn in that introductory module. So the learning objectives for the introductory module, definition of common terms, we've got a few of them listed here: zoonotic, FAD, endemic disease, etc. Understand the far-reaching effects of an animal disease outbreak at a livestock event, how that can affect animal welfare and animal-human health, the markets, public perceptions, personal lives, and communities. Understand the roles involved in emergency response. And so trying to identify the individuals that should be at the table. And again, that's going to be really unique depending on the fair setup and whether it's a volunteer fair, whether they have paid employees, whether it's a county fair, a regional show, a state fair, or a national exhibition. Those are all going to look a little bit different in terms of how they approach or the first few steps of this process. And then also to recall a 2 to 4 step process to immediately respond to an emergency request at a fair or exposition, so that they know exactly what they're supposed to do and they have a notebook in place so they know how to approach that. So we're gonna, and this worked, and hopefully it will work in the earlier when Liz and I and Bernie and Heidi all met earlier. So hopefully it still works. We'll go ahead and listen to a little bit of the module. This is just a snippet out of the module, so it'll just give you an idea of how we approached the emergency response team.
The far-reaching effects of an outbreak drives the need to be prepared and do emergency response planning. Your first step in planning is to assemble an emergency response team. Every event is unique, so every emergency response team is unique. Each person has a role to play and a perspective to bring during planning and during response. Select each team member to see why they are needed on the emergency response team. Veterinarians are the authority for animal health and welfare. Depending on the size and scale of the event, multiple veterinarians may need to be engaged during planning. During an animal disease outbreak, veterinarians are one of the first points of contact. They may need to take samples for diagnostics, run lab tests, and in severe situations, be involved in euthanasia decisions. State veterinarians have authority and resources to report diseases that have mandated reporting requirements by state and/or federal organizations. Livestock event personnel includes anyone involved in planning and executing a livestock event, including paid and volunteer positions. These individuals need to be involved in the planning process because they are the ones who will have the most intimate knowledge of the event itself and the people attending it. They should know where all animals are housed or stalled, who owns the animals, where trailers are parked and best routes in and out of facilities, and may have animal handling expertise. They will also direct policy for the event and communicate those policies to attendees. During an outbreak, livestock event personnel will have access to participant information and other event staff working directly with animals.
Okay, and that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. The one thing I forgot to mention is each one of these 3 modules are 20 minutes long. And of course, you go through and you click on each one of these. You'd have your emergency response, you'd have your consumers, and reporting and that type of thing. And so each one of these team members that would be at the table would certainly be it gives you a definition of who's on that. Now, the module, with it being 20 minutes, obviously this is just a snippet of what we're offering, but it kind of gives you an idea in terms of how we set things up for the program.
The far-reaching effects of an outbreak.
So the second module is the livestock event personnel module, and what we determined from those sessions with the experts was that it's vital to develop an effective emergency response plan. So that way, but we also have to have staff buy-in as a result of that. So getting them involved early and having them as part of the team was certainly important. And so we indicated that, making sure that everybody that you bring together should be part of that team and feel included. There's always room for improvement in communication, and there's that kind of, we determined that early on, and we incorporated components of that in this module, but we'll talk a little bit more about communication towards the end of the presentation. And then when and how to contact animal health and public health experts for diagnosis. That's certainly a key component as well. And then, again, who's the chain of command, and then, where is that contact information housed? And that would essentially be in a notebook that you would set up in terms of your emergency action plan. What we did was we developed the plan with a team prior to an event. So we indicated that that was an important thing. We build communication with that team over the plan and discuss it with the group, and then consult with experts to become familiar with federal and state laws to help inform decision making. So including that as a component of that plan, and already having it predetermined, so you're not trying to throw caution to the wind to figure out what the best approach is. But if you figure this out prior to the event, and then there's the opportunity for reflection after the event to make sure that if you did have a disease outbreak go on, how effective was your plan? If you didn't have a disease outbreak go on, but something occurred during the fair that would make you take a step back and say, really, this is an area we need to address. So having that reflection period after the fair is pretty important. And then again, having another review of that plan prior to the next year's exhibition, and making sure that everything is updated and current. What we do believe is that emergency response plans can follow a framework and must be utilized to mitigate risk. Timely, transparent, and effective communication with event personnel, first responders, exhibitions, and the public is essential. Animal diseases vary in nature and will require different responses. And so these are all the things that we will, here, let me get on to the next slide there, that will be covered in that livestock event personnel module. So the objectives for this module were to organize and assist teams to prepare for, respond to, and recover from an animal disease related event. Develop an emergency response plan, so indicating the chain of command, a communications plan, an animal caretaking plan if the barn has to be shut down or the facility, and then guidance by federal and state laws to inform decision-making. And again, making sure that the right people are at the table. If you're at a state event, you know, most likely you're going to have the state veterinarian or state public health officials that are going to be involved in that process, and making sure that they're at the table and they understand that. If you're at a smaller community event, that may look a little bit differently. But the sooner that we can make sure that everything is okay in terms of the disease concern, or that things need to be contained, then, you know, that's certainly going to stop the spread and mitigate the risk. And then establish a regular review of the emergency response plan and team members. So those are all things that that we have covered in module 2. And so we'll give you a little bit of a snippet here of module 2.
The response team has been organized. The development of the plan begins. There is no need to start from scratch. Consider finding a template or other event plan as a starting point. These plans should be customized for the size and scope of the event, perhaps with multiple variations for different situations, and contain procedures, steps, and checklists. This table of contents shows the basic components that every plan should include. Select the first tab to begin. To see an overview of the plan again at any point, select the Table of Contents button. The first section, Contact Information, should at a minimum include event address and phone number, first responders contact info like sheriff's office, fire department, ambulance, event manager's contact information like fair or livestock office, contact list for emergency response team, and agreed upon methods of communication. All team members should have access to this list. Identification on who is the authority on owning and executing the plan. Contact information for state and federal authorities who are responsible for communicating disease outbreaks to the public. Remember, all contact phone numbers should be direct lines or cell phones. Some sections in this binder may have additional information to consider. To see this information, select the Important Note button.
So we've got a number of pop-ups like that. There's certainly, and when we get to the website, if we have time, we can hop on there real quick and we can show you that the glossary, when you click on that, will certainly have information there that defines the important components that the fair management and the people that are actually setting up these emergency response plans will certainly need. That'll help them through the process.
The response.
So the third module is the first responder module. And what we found out through our content expertise was, again, effective emergency response to livestock related events requires unique training. And a lot of people had brought up that, you know, emergency response personnel or first responders, when they're asked to be involved in events, that a lot of times they're brought into things that maybe they aren't comfortable with, or we assume that because they're at a fair that they should be versed in, and they're certainly not. And animal movement really comes to mind. And even if it's not a disease event, this module could certainly at least pose some questions or awareness that, you know, if you're not skilled in animal handling, maybe you either need to look for some additional guidance or education. you know, so that you don't create or make a situation worse than what it needs to be, because a lot of times there's some horror stories that we had heard in terms of that animal handling piece of people that weren't trained. You know, understanding that animal-human bond for livestock exhibitors, that it's unique, and then successful animal handling and movement requires proper training. So it's, again, it's an awareness campaign. And in a 20-minute module, they're not going to learn everything, but hopefully it'll create some questions, and it will create an environment that the team works together during the off season so that they can actually educate educate everybody who's involved with the event. Communicating with local event organizers to define roles and participate in the training. So that's what we expect emergency response to do, is to reach out and say, hey, we're going to be helping out. You know, how can we be of assistance in this whole process and in the plan? Understand or explore that animal-human bond of exhibitors, and then identify animal handling and movement trainings to incorporate into the continuous education program. So maybe working with the livestock event personnel to say, hey, can we get some cattle onto the fairgrounds during the off season? We just want to understand this vision pattern and how it relates to animal movement, and how can we be of help versus a hindrance when it comes time to move animals if the event needs that. What we believe through the program, that it is possible to properly train for animal response events. When responding to events, understanding the importance of being respectful to this complex relationship becomes really paramount. And that animal behavior is directly related to the handler's abilities. So the learning objectives for this module then were to develop a plan to communicate with local event organizers to define roles, offer support in emergency responses, execution, and follow-up. Coordinate with the event organizers to create a response dialogue for a public audience. So again, communicating without exciting or creating fear in either the exhibitors or the public that are there. I think clear communication and transparent communication is really important, but understanding what your role is with that. You may not necessarily be the expert if you're the first responder to talk about the disease itself, and so having the person who can share that information, share that is probably a critical and important piece. Create awareness of the unique human-animal bond that exists for exhibitors, and then plan for the use of animal handling techniques consistent with best practices of animal welfare. And so those are kind of our targets. Now we have two snips from the website to show you on this.
As you discovered in the introduction module, it is important for first responders to be included in emergency response planning for livestock events. Often that request is made to you, but if not, first responders can be proactive and initiate these communications. Select each step on the bulletin board to learn about the process of working with event organizers. Identify if someone within your emergency response unit is already responsible for these types of events. If so, determine if they are already serving as a liaison with livestock event personnel and engage them in your preparation work. The liaison for the livestock event should take the lead on communicating with livestock event personnel. Determine if there is an existing emergency response plan for this event on file. If not, reach out to the livestock event personnel to determine if they have an existing plan. If they do, request as a copy for your team to review. If they do not, offer to assist in developing a plan for the event and encourage them to take the livestock event personnel Prepare2Respond module. Initiate a meeting request with livestock event personnel. Some events have multiple superintendents for each barn or species, while others have a general livestock manager. So consider which leaders to engage. Ask these questions to get started. Do you have a plan to address emergency animal situations, including those with implications for animal and human health and safety? Will you share the plan with us so we can review our roles and responsibilities? What role do you view first responders having in these incidents? If a plan does exist, thoroughly review and ask questions to understand it. Select the sample button to see an example of how to start the communication.
This is just a sample letter. You know, they can use it as a template or at least give them an idea if they choose to reach out via email. In a lot of cases, it might be a quick phone call just to say, hey, you know, we're in a small environment or a small exhibition, and you know everybody because you're all in the same community and it's a small community. So it might be something as simple as that versus a formal letter. And this is just to kind of show you a little bit about working with animals that we share. Again, we're not expecting them to be experts after they get done with this, but maybe at least an awareness that, hey, there's certain steps that we have to take, and maybe we need to leave this to the experts. Again, so we're not a hindrance.
Although it is not your primary role in the disease outbreak response, you may be asked to assist livestock event personnel to move animals. It is not an expectation that you be an expert in this area, but there are a few things to know that can help you feel more comfortable when asked to step in. Select any topic below to learn more about common livestock handling principles. Be aware of animal behavior. The ears and head position will indicate where an animal is looking. Animals will show signs of agitation such as vocalization, rapid or open mouth breathing, or wide eyes. Cautiously observe animals to read their behavior and demeanor before approaching. If animals are agitated or aggressive, ask for assistance. Animals such as horses and cattle are prone to rearing and kicking, which can cause injury.
And then they'd be able to go through all those other, you know, how to move animals, moving groups of animals, distractions. So each one of those, there's going to be educational components. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay or Bernie.
Bernie was going to take the lead on this part.
Okay.
All right, let me share my screen here. Oh, I need a screen share privilege, please.
So Dr. Kuber, you just need to give up your screen sharing, and then she'll be able to share her screen.
Yeah, I did. I just did. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I stopped sharing.
Okay, can you all see this? Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so Paul, do you want to go through it, or would you like me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in this, the website came together, I think, pretty quickly and pretty well. So the URL is Prepare2Respond program.org. This is really the landing spot for all things P2R, and it's a really easy transition. So on the bottom here, we've got the list, right? The checklist. First thing you do is to create and register and sign in. And that's just creating a new account, much like you do in most everything we do online. The second thing we do then is to select the course. And that's what Paul was referring to, either the first responder series modules or the livestock personnel series modules. And then you work through the interactive modules. The samples that you saw through the PowerPoint will be extensive here. Obviously, you will go through the whole course. And then the fourth step is that once you complete both a quick pre-test and a post-test, and really it's not a test, it's just to get your assessment of your knowledge before taking this program, and then what your assessment of your gain knowledge is after you've taken these two courses. And then once those are complete, you can download and save your certificate for your records. So I'll just go up here. I have not signed into any of the courses, so you can see the presets, the pre-exams, but here's the home button. The About Us is very similar to what Paul had gone through in the PowerPoint, really what our learning objectives were, of course, what we are and what we are not. And then, of course, the core team, the content writers, the industry reviewers, etc. As we move to the courses here, I'll click on courses, and this is where you can see you have options. The livestock event personnel module includes both the introduction module that Paul was visiting about, and then also the livestock event personnel module. The first responder module series includes, again, the introduction module, and then, of course, the first responder module. So you can select really any of these. I'll just select the livestock event personnel module, since that might be the most applied here. And then here are the pre and post tests. So you would click on this, you would answer these series of questions and submit your answers, and then that would put you into the courses. The resource page right here is one that's it's kind of evergreen, right? We're working on putting more things on there over time. So there's some templates. There will be some links to some more external resources as we pull more things together. And then these were a lot of the external resources we got from regional fairs, state fairs, national fairs, and other folks in extension and other facets that we received some really good resources that we wanted to make sure people were aware of. So I'll end there and pass it back to Paul, unless there's more that you'd like me to go over. Maybe just one more thing, the button where it says your username. This is where you can adjust your profile, but the really quick thing is you can get your course certificate to download when you've completed the courses. So I think that's the last piece I'll share and turn it back to Paul.
Okay, thanks, Bernie. Yeah, and I'll let me go ahead and reshare here. If I can. Yeah, so the next steps for the module, when we had we gotten the funding, we had committed to keeping the website active for at least 2 years. We don't have a huge number of people that have taken that relative or compared to our youth quality assurance program, but you're probably going to have a pretty small percentage in terms of the fair industry that would actually take this, because a lot of times it would be one person or maybe two within an environment. We would like to encourage everybody to do it, but they would bring that back to their fair community and then be able to write their program. They're able to go back in after they've completed the courses to access all the information, and so they can use it as a resource once they've completed it. It's not an annual certification, it's just a one-time certification, but then you have access to the materials there. And so the next steps, one of the things that came up throughout this whole process, when Marla Calico came to the table, she was fantastic. She's been a fantastic partner. She supported the program. She actually had us write an article about Prepare2Respond within the Fairs and Expos magazine, which is their trade publication. And I think they have over 1,000 members, some of which are worldwide in Australia and the United Kingdom and Canada and Mexico and elsewhere. But she had us write an article in the trade publication. So we got some interest there. Trying to get down to those actual smaller fairs sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, because a lot of who attend the Fairs and Expos convention, and there's regional conventions as well for that organization, usually are in that management role. And so the trickle down process has been a little bit of a challenge. And so we've talked to Marla about trying to figure out a campaign to be able to promote this even further. Now, we are coming up on our 2-year commitment, but at this point, it looks like we'll be able to keep the website and the modules going for an extended period. We're still working on how that's going to financially work out. We did during the process of building the website, we realized that communications was kind of a shortfall. So Marla sent out information with disease. She sent out information with emergency response, and we got all kinds of information back from her fair community. It was super helpful and supportive. And that was after some questions came up with the content expertise. She sent out asking for communications template when we were towards the end of the website build, and it was crickets. Nobody had any templates. And we talked with Dr. Amber Idle and Washington State Department of Ag. It was right about the time that we had some avian influenza concerns here in Washington. And I had asked them if they had some templates for disease. And she said, well, we're creating them. So it kind of got us to thinking that maybe we need to have a learning module that's focused on communications. Larger fairs and expositions will probably have a public information officer. Smaller fairs may be working with somebody who's in that volunteer position and social media. Maybe they've got somebody in their county government that has a public informations piece, or maybe they're so small that they don't even have access to that. And so we thought a module in terms of how to communicate, what to communicate, and who should be part of that communication decision would be pretty important. And, again, this would be between fair management and employees, communication with volunteers, the public, and of course, news outlets or media. We also determined that there's probably a need for some tabletop exercises so that they can actually execute an activity to see whether that plan is going to work before they get into the fair. And so these 2 items here, we determined that we'd write 2 additional grants or applications for this round of NADPRP funding, trying to look at one, a communications modules in addition, and then a second grant where we're looking at priority 7, where we have a train the trainer module, where if you've got a veterinary public health official or a veterinarian that's tied to your fair, and hopefully you do, that's one of the recommendations is we try to encourage fairs, whether it's a paid position or volunteer position, to make sure that that person is in close contact for advice and to be able to help facilitate an issue if it occurs, as well as even just doing things as simple as veterinary checks. But with that train the trainer program, we could actually pull that veterinarian in. They could go through the online training modules to learn how to do a tabletop exercise, and it would be a step-by-step process, working with CES and Eric Hess. He's offered to come to the table if we do get funding to be able to help us execute those tabletop exercises. And so that's kind of where we're at this point. We thought we'd see if we could apply for that funding and be able to expand this program and then continue to promote it to the fairs industry. And when you look at, I think the IFE had indicated that in terms of exhibitions on their average level, each exhibition across the country, and this is for the smaller fairs, not including the large exhibitions. I mean, some of the Texas shows, you have over 2 million in terms of attendees at the fair. You might have 20,000 livestock at some of those bigger shows, or potentially even more when you start to look at Oklahoma and some of those exhibitions. But if you look at the general average fair population who are members in the International Association of Fairs, we might be looking at about 25,000 attendees during the course of a 3 to 5 day fair. And then, probably somewhere in the 750 to 1,000 animals that may occur during those fairs. And so not as much as what we see in the commercial industry, but the risk is certainly heightened because of that public exposure. And so that's what we're trying to target. So I guess with that, I'll open it up for questions. And Bernie and Lindsay and I can certainly hopefully answer the questions that you give us. So thank you for letting us do this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. We really appreciate it. And Lindsay and Bernie, we really do appreciate it. It's been a great webinar and a great program. We did have a couple comments. The modules look great. Being 20 minutes is perfect for the Go users. It supports micro-learning. Awesome job using Articulate. Thank you, Dawn, for that. The other thing that we heard, is there a cost to the course registration? So thank you, Lindsay, for going through the chat and answering these questions. No, the entire thing is free at this time. Another comment was really like the cohesive look and layout. There was a question about, I thought this was interesting, require the date of birth. And so Lindsay wrote back to say, we take the protection of youth information very seriously. And it's just to ensure that if you are a youth, we are providing the best protection. So I apologize for me putting in a huge post. I just wanted to put in our evaluation link so that anybody can go in, and hopefully you will go in and do an evaluation or take time to do that evaluation. So there was another one, sorry if I missed this, but how many students have gone through the training, and are you able to track that?
Yeah, we are able to track that. And I think at this point we are sitting just under about 400. And so we've got the information from those. And I think what, some of those may be from the same institution, like, a handful might be from one fair or exhibition. The challenge is we're trying to figure out, and what we is how do we get to that end user? And I think there probably needs to be more dynamic push on our part to be able to get that out to either the State Department of Ag. Not every fair is a member of the International Association of Fairs and Expositions, because that's an elective organization. So let's say in the state of Ohio, I think the Ohio State Fair is a member, but not all the county fairs are, because they have a pretty dynamic state association. And so, it's been, we thought that going through IFE, that might be a great push. We've given a lot of presentations. We were at their trade show last year with a booth with Prepare2Respond, and we combined that with Youth for the Quality Care of Animals, because again, from that program on the youth side of things and this program on the adult side of things, or even career exploration for youth, we thought that they tie in together pretty nicely. But so I think there's still improvement that we could make to be able to get this out to people. And as Lindsay indicated, there is no charge at this point. But our commitment was supposed to end on June 24th. I don't see that stopping, or the website going blank. I see it still being out there, but we're just looking at how can we expand it and move forward. So.
Okay, and thanks, Lindsay, again for answering Karen's question about how to register. Does anybody else have any other questions? You can also unmute yourself and ask a verbal question if you'd like, or you can continue to put questions in the chat. There's another comment, just a terrific job. So, a lot of positive comments.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about the other two. I won't speak to them, but I was nervous when we got the award. I was excited and I was nervous because I thought, none of us are veterinarians. we all have an animal background and advanced degrees in animal science, and we've worked with the veterinary community, and we do have the fairs experience. But I thought, oh, we need to get the right people to the table, and I think we rallied and we did do that. And we do have, that whole Youth for the Quality Care of Animals, that curriculum piece. We've done a very good job, and I think since we started that, we're well over 440,000 hits on that program. And like I said, just in the last year alone, we had 97,000 youth that certified, and that's an annual program. There's a lot more room to grow on that program, but we knew that we had the ability to be able to create something online and have it accessible and meet the need.
Great. Julie said she was going to ask a question, but she must have to go. She said, I'll contact Paul later about my question. Another comment, thanks, great presentation. I love hearing the update on this program. Yeah, it seems like a great, another comment was, it seems like it would be a good training for Medical Reserve Corps, animal response volunteers in the various states.
Well, that's one of the areas. So like on the emergency response thing, when we were actually having one of our last meetings, it was actually during the storyboard phase. We had a long discussion about how do we reach emergency response, and we didn't have a real good answer. You know, and so maybe, you know, if anybody on this call has any thoughts or ideas and you want to email that to us so that we can reach out to those communities. You know, there was some discussion about one organization, but we weren't sure if that was the right direction or not, to be able to reach at that higher level. But I'm kind of thinking now, after we've had the program going, trying to figure out alternative organizations, and maybe every state's going to be a different approach, depending on how they're structured.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?